My grandfather and my great grandmother were interned here in the United States during World War II. And so I feel like I get the benefit of looking at both sides of the equation. And I really appreciate you bringing everybody into that, because I think a lot of folks, especially on the white privileged Caucasian side of this topic, often see themselves paralyzed by like not knowing what to do and not seeing themselves as part of it, or only seeing themselves as part of the problem, maybe not part of the
Mhm.
solution. Man, Amani, you want to build on that?
Yes to the decolonial practice of answering a question for an answer with more question.
You,
um, let's see what I have to add to that. I think the way that I experience the practice of naming what something as big as the idea of decolonization is, the way that I work with that these days is like clarifying a lens through which to engage with a process of aligning. And so decolonization specifies a lens of recognizing the histories and systems of oppression, the inertias of power in this particular system, country, society, world that we live in. And to be in process of disrupting and dismantling those systems, expanding our capacity, like expanding our worldviews and connections to include those voices who have been colonized upon as sources for the way forward for healing.
Love it, man. So Phil, man, I want to hear from you as well, and anything else you would add to it. And in addition to, why do you think it's important that we begin to break down the colonial structures?
Yeah, Amu and Amani, you guys definitely dropped some really, really beautiful things there. And I have a lot of similar sentiments when it comes to decolonization. And, you know, for me, it's really, the premise of it is the process of unlearning. And not only the process of unlearning, but the process of dismantling, you know, because that's like the action portion of decolonization. And it can be as simple to the idea that men are strong, right, to as complex of an idea as our First Nations and Indigenous people are subject to living on reservations, right? That's their corner of land. So there's so many different things, but I think in order to get into the conversation of decolonization, it takes coming from a place of being willing to believe that all the things that you have learned up to this point in your life are untrue, or at least have the potential of not being true, which is like, it's a really big step. Difficult, you know? So yeah, for me, decolonization is conversation, it's questions, it's action, it's legislation, it's, you know, it crosses all boundaries. And, you know, I think it's so important because it's very clear that the way that the world is ran, especially the United States, is ineffective, right? It's not sustainable. People are, you know, there's people suffering, there's people without jobs, people without clean water, people that are, you know, don't have what I consider the basic human rights or basic human needs. So it's important to enter into that conversation because one, a change needs to occur because it's not sustainable. And two, decolonization isn't just the work of Indigenous peoples, right? Or just Black and brown peoples. It's the work of all of us because this has the narrative that we have been fed and have deemed to be true is affecting all of us negatively.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that you pull all people into that conversation, because I think of myself as somebody who kind of straddles the line. I straddle the boundary a little bit because of my Caucasian roots, that I can relate to the Caucasian narrative right now of what the hell am I supposed to do, right? You know, my people were the bad guys. So what is that part of my ancestry about. I want to forget that part of my ancestry and do something different. And then the other side that I relate to with coming from immigrant peoples, my grandfather and my great grandmother were interned here in the United States during World War II. And so I feel like I get the benefit of looking at both sides of the equation. And I really appreciate you bringing everybody into that, because I think a lot of folks, especially on the white privileged Caucasian side of this topic, often see themselves paralyzed by like not knowing what to do and not seeing themselves as part of it, or only seeing themselves as part of the problem, maybe not part of the solution. So I want to say one thing myself, and then open it back up again about my thoughts on decolonization. You know, the prefix D, to decolonize, you know, to dethrone is to remove, to dismantle, like you were saying, Phil, and to get rid of these structures. But then there's got to be a recolonization or a something. I don't know if it's going back to colonization and colonial ways. That's not what I'm proposing, but we got to replace it. Let's say replace instead of recolonize. Replace it with something else, something new. So perhaps you guys want to speak a little bit to what do you believe serves, and the things that we're talking about dismantling, what do we want to replace that with? What is our reference point for even what serves our society moving forward?
I'll start just in reflecting the appreciation of calling in all people, and really calling in the fact that, like, if we're talking about colonization, we're talking about a process that everybody who is not living traditionally in the ancestral ways of their people has undergone and has suffered within and under, even if they were the ones empowered or superficially empowered by that system. And so for me, there is a collective calling to return to each other, first of all, like in naming that. And in returning to each other, part of that is, like we were saying, returning to the earth and returning to a cosmology, an orientation, a way of being that really honors and is turned towards and turned within each other and the earth.
You know, when I think of the going from D to I feel like earlier I talked about like reclaiming and restoring, and that feels important. And especially when it comes to how we are in our bodies. Like more and more often, I feel like I'm returning to this like form of minds, this place where I have sensation and memory, and this place where I get to like be in contact with other bodies that like navigates this world, and like really being in the process of like learning how to be here in form. And a part of that for me is the like actually like taking the time to like allow this to be mine in some way, and mine in a like way that actually honors those that come with me, honor my community, honor the lands, honor the like histories that are a part of me. And then in that process, also restoring it, taking the time to get intimate enough that I know who I am and who those that come with me are, so that I can like create some like narrative, some story, or connect to some like peoples that have story that let me walk here with dignity. Let me walk here in my power, and find the processes of initiation that are like rightfully mine, so that I can like actually come into like the being that can be here in a way that will have the like most potential for like dynamic, creative, like beautiful impact and love in some ways. Yeah.